I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to Playing from the Tips and the 108th episode of Golf Australia Magazine's preview and tipping show that delves into every corner of professional golf and offers up our so-called experts' best tips of the week. Fresh off the blink and you'll miss something remarkable 89th Masters. My name is Jimmy Emanuel, here to keep things on track as we reflect on Rory's first green jacket and look ahead to the PGA TOUR, LPGA TOUR and DP World Tour action of this week. Joining me to cover all of that and so much more is a former columnist, writer, podcasting czar who, despite all that experience and tournaments watched under his belt, still stated, "I can't breathe" yesterday during the final round, which, given his advanced age, was genuinely concerning. Rod Morey, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. I appreciate you pointing that out. What a week, though. I don't think there's anything left to be said, but what a week. That's the first time in a long time. The last round that I can think of even remotely like that was 2016 with Stenson and Mickelson, where you just could not take your eyes off it. That was for different reasons. That was amazing golf from both of them. Yesterday was just... Have you got any explanation? Have you seen any explanation for the pitch that Rory hit on 13?
No.
Last time I saw that shot
all.
was at Mangrove Mountain.
Yeah.
It may have been me that hit it.
Yeah, I've seen that shot plenty of times from people who aren't contending for a major, and it was a mishit. It was probably a slight missed target. It was just, everything was wrong.
It was a mess, a hot mess, I think the kids call it.
Exactly. We'll delve a little bit more into Rory in a second, because first we need to address the elephant in the room, or lack of elephant in the room, because our usual third seat is empty, which can only be attributed to the fact that Adrian Logue was either more worried about his travel plans than alerting us that he would be unavailable, or he's hiding out because he failed to tip Rory and we both did.
And compared himself to Rory on our text chain during the week.
Correct.
Did he make 2 triples in winning the net
Two
club
triples on his way to a
medal?
net 69 or something?
Right.
Yeah. Just
barely
the
tell
full
the two
scale
of them
of
apart.
the full scale of his own delusion was on full display last weekend.
I wonder who he was playing
on
a match
Rory
against who didn't know about it over the weekend. You know he plays matches against you and you don't know.
Yes.
Until the end, if he wins. It's brilliant. Sorry, I interrupted.
On Rory and everything, that was a good jumping off point for us to do our usual highlights and lowlights. Obviously, Rory just winning is the highlight, but it was done in such a remarkable way, as we already mentioned.
Well, just winning is the key there, isn't it? He couldn't have done much more. It's been a long time since I was immersed in a golf tournament the way that one ran. It started on Thursday. That was the truth of it. Every day had a great story from Thursday to... You don't always get that. Truly one of the classics. Everybody's saying that, and as they should, because this one will never, ever be forgotten, I don't think.
No, so there's obviously Rory winning, but doing it in such purely Rory style. Justin Rose at 44, I think he is now, and nearly coming back and winning again. Remarkably, that both the 2 times he's finished runner-up, most recently, I believe, is in playoff losses to 2 great European Ryder Cup teammates. Yeah. They just can't get it right to get out of each other's way in the right time.
Mixed feelings, I'd imagine, for Justin. He'd have been very happy for Rory, but after... he was shattered for himself, because you're right, that window is closing. He and Adam Scott, the window is closing. So, But look, interesting repercussions. Sorry, finish up.
Yeah. No, Bryson was obviously impressive for 3 days, but kind of a scrambling Bryson. It was a different kind of Bryson, and it kind of just, it all came to roost on the Sunday. That has to happen eventually when someone's playing golf like that on a big stage.
He could have had Sunday's round on Saturday, or indeed probably Friday. It was lurking, wasn't it? It was always going to catch up, and particularly at a course like Augusta. As we said, there's diabolical places around there where you can't recover, and he hit it in a few of those. But he was rubbish, frankly, on Sunday. Surprisingly rubbish.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, and he... no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the week itself aside, it's still fresh in everybody's minds. The broader implications, I think, are good. I've always thought golf is at its best when Rory's at the top of the game. He's a great spokesman. He's a great thinker. He's prepared to change his mind. He's got his critics and he's not perfect. But I feel like, I don't know, the world just felt a little bit better after that putt finally went in yesterday, despite the horrors of waiting for him to actually putt and thinking, God, he can't possibly miss this one, can he? But once it went in, the world just felt a little bit better, you know. There's so much going on in the world, and it was a really, really good story.
It was one of those Masters that had all the storylines that kind of tie in perfectly. Rory, for 11 years or whatever it is, has been, can he do it and everything like that. The succeeding of that goal and knocking that out is obviously fantastic. Then you've got a bit of a rivalry that's developing with Bryson, where the last couple of majors they've been in there and gone head to head, albeit not quite as directly as they did yesterday. You got rising stars like Ludwig Oberg behind them, who was right in it as well until a couple of late ones, and then
Iceberg
veterans.
Thank you, Baker Finch, for that. Iceberg.
I don't know if I'm right behind it.
Well, he hit the Titanic straight after Finch. He said it, didn't he? At that horror show on 17. So, but up until that point, it sounded great, I thought.
Yeah. And then you had your Jason Days, other veterans, and Justin Rose, who are making their plays for maybe a last time at trying to win one. Jason Days got a little bit longer than Justin Rose, but a few of those kind of veteran players. And then you also look at, it's probably a few maybe heading on their way out. Adam Scott was one who was always going to make a cut at Augusta, and you're just ready for him to be there on the weekend and maybe have a run. He didn't really sniff it after a bad first round. Phil Mickelson was coming in with a lot of hype from the live side of things and didn't perform necessarily. We know Tiger's not there, so it's an interesting kind of transitional period, but Rory kind of has stood up then and really taken ownership of sort of the top level.
Yeah, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Couples and Langer. Again, Friday had a great story, and it was, there was every chance one or both of them might have made the cut, which is just extraordinary. 65, Fred Couples, and shot under par, oldest player. That's just extraordinary stuff. I saw him hitting a hybrid into 18. Rory hit a 3/4 gap wedge.
That was Bernhard Langer. I think he hit a hybrid into, it was in excess of 10 of the par fours.
Wow.
On one of the days.
So trying to hit a hybrid into the 7th. Or the 9th.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying prospect. It really does show the talent level. I mean, they're very special players, obviously, but at that age to do that is just off the charts. A lot of 67-year-olds couldn't walk the course.
Exactly. And then you've got this kind of what looks to be a going ahead. You'd think Rory's won now. He'll contend there regularly. Scotty Scheffler, who far from had his best stuff, was right there still. Bryson's going to keep going back and knocking on the door there as he continues to try and figure out. I don't know if he's trying to figure out golf, if he's trying to figure out tournament golf, if he's trying to figure out something greater than any of that, but it's quite fascinating to watch.
And he is a remarkable character. I'm not a fan. I've said that before. It's not to my tastes the way he goes about stuff. But you cannot deny that performance at Augusta. If you look at his Augusta record, almost literally comes out of nowhere. He has done nothing but struggle on that course. I mean, last year he finished tied 6th. It was a bit of a backdoor effort. He had a good first round, but that was sustained good play. He's a fascinating character because he's figured that course out. Now, he wasn't hitting it very well over the course of the week, but he's figured the course out. He is a danger at Augusta from now until the end of time.
And shout out to the new addition with On the Range and everything like that at Augusta, that they track how many golf balls each one of them hits. And his lunacy is truly measured of like hitting 1,000 range balls and playing all those rounds. It's quite fascinating to watch.
And just one last thing, Jimmy. I saw something which I hadn't seen on Masters coverage. I didn't think there'd be anything left. We got a little glimpse of the walk from the first green to the second tee. I didn't realise it was through the bushes on the pine straw there, but they had a walking camera go through. It was like... It actually looked like the sort of thing, you play a golf course that's got that sort of thing. It's fantastic. You emerge from the trees and it opens up in front of you. So it was good to see that as well. That was highlights from the Masters.
They continue to push and advance all their coverage every year. And there was a few other elements. There was more interesting, probably commentary from some of the players about the golf course, about everything like that. And I don't know if that's with an eye towards we're not going to be as maybe strict on those sort of things, or whether those players will have a little bit of a conversation. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year, for example, with a Jordan Spieth, whether, something happens, he keeps quieter on it. It's always fascinating to see.
For those who didn't see it, Spieth just came out and said publicly, you get mud balls here. You're not supposed to say it. You're not allowed to say it, but I'm saying it. It's like, wow. That's a fairly direct challenge, isn't it? I wonder if somebody had a word.
Yes. I'm assuming someone might have come and had a word with him at some stage.
Does tell you how frustrating that must have been to take that step. It wouldn't have been done lightly. You know, Spieth wouldn't have just spat that out. He's one of the thinking golfers. He's done that deliberately. So, yes, it was interesting stuff. Great week.
And the ongoing bubbling of talking after a round and players, Colin Morikawa early in the week, Rory weighed in on it. Then Bryson does media after a disappointing Sunday. So does Justin Rose. Shane Lowry had a few things to say on Saturday. So there's plenty happening in world golf, and it kind of pushed all the live PGA Tour stuff away for at least a week. There was obviously the people who are very invested in that, who like to use it as a reference point in how they talk about any golf, but it was not a major storyline.
No, and it was barely talked about on Sunday. It should have been the PGA Tour versus live. It was the classic. But I think the personalities of Rory and Bryson overshadow that, and you're right. That's a rivalry to look forward to because you get the feeling there might be some genuine not liking of each other.
Yes.
They're very different personalities, and that could develop into something really interesting. And Bryson will play that because he'll understand here's the tragedy of live. It's only 4 times a year at the moment. We don't get to see Rory Bryson that often. Maybe that's what makes it more delicious. The Olympics wouldn't be the Olympics it was every year, would it? So.
No, exactly. On last week, we had 2 wins with both of us tipping Rory. We also had 5 top 10s, all of which adds up to 24 wins and 47 top 10s so far in 2024. Rod, you know those are numbers that are unrivaled by any tipping podcast that has no idea how this year's numbers stack up against last year's because the host doesn't keep a record.
I will need to confirm, but I'm fairly certain that you're right.
I'm pretty confident with that.
I'll research it this week, but I think you're pretty safe to throw that out there.
Very good. On to this week we go. And first up, we'll stick with men's golf as the lead before we get to the first women's major of the year next week. But it's the traditional PGA Tour post-Masters stop of the RBC Heritage. Sponsor watch, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. It's a big old bank.
And huge in golf.
Yeah,
huge
massive.
in golf. A lot of sponsor all the players personally as well as tournaments.
Yep, which gets to the next point that this is one of the PGA Tour's signature events, which is perhaps a struggle to understand given it's the week after the Masters. You would imagine a lot of players want to take time off. A lot of players have always gone and played this event. Yep. It's a nice holiday spot with the family who are in Augusta. They can play a tournament but also have a bit of downtime, but I'd say very strong sponsor relationship delivers a signature event here where they get the biggest names to come along and play, even though it is a weird spot in the schedule.
Sorry, will Rory play? And if he doesn't, does he get fined?
Yeah, I'm not 100% across exactly. He's not going to play.
No, I know that.
But I'm not across where you can skip out on one every so often because Rory has skipped out on signature events more than once, which involves a fine. The $4.2 million he won last week probably helped pay that fine pretty easily. As
I understand it, he was travelling okay before that. That wasn't a life changer for him, so I suspect any fine is going to be okay.
And I'd suggest that after how much good coverage golf got last year, they might find a way to maybe suspend that fine.
Why the week after a major, though, Jimmy? It just seems like you should never allow that to happen.
No, I mean, it's obviously this tournament's always, well, not always, but for a long time had this spot in the schedule and it works for the tournament, it works for the venue, it works for a lot of the players. It's a drive to South Carolina, to Hilton Head from Augusta National. You wouldn't even need to fly. And the sponsor is a major supporter, so when they came up with this system, they need to look after those sponsors. But it doesn't make a lot of sense, and they've
got the Canadian Open as well, don't they? RBC,
correct? Yeah.
So why wouldn't you make that a signature event?
Yeah,
especially as a national open, that seems to make more sense, doesn't it? I mean, you're going to have players very unhappy about playing this week, whilst they're not contracted like on Live, where they don't get a choice. These signature events takes that choice away, and if you schedule them in spots where they don't like them, you're going to start to get some pushback.
Yeah, I think it's always this move to this tiered event system is always going to be an imperfect science. There's always going to be some slight issues, but this is one that really stands out. And it's, the inner workings and behind the scenes of a tournament sponsor and exactly how these things come to pass are enormous. So I think the PGA Tour is never going to be too open about exactly how they come to those decisions, but it is something that needs discussion. And I'm sure the players do discuss it through their players committee. Rory, as I mentioned, is not there, but every other player of the top 12 outside Zach Johnson and the couple of live players are in the field. Wow. So they still do get them dragging over there. That, of course, includes the defending champion Scotty Scheffler, who won at Harbour Town, which we'll get into in a little bit, last year. The top 12 players includes the likes of Justin Rose, Ludwig Oberg, resurgent Max Homer, who made the cut and finished in the top 12. That's a pretty good bounce back for a guy who's been absolutely hammered for his play. And Shane Lowry is another one of the players you'd keep an eye on here. He's got a decent record at this event, a few sort of back ends of the made cut of the field, but also a couple of top 10s. He'll also be basking in the reflection of his very close friend's win. I'd imagine he may have tipped an alcoholic beverage or two in to celebrate, so we'll see how he bounces back.
He might have even shared some with Rory. If he was lucky.
Yeah, that's
right. We saw him afterwards talking to CBS, and he was just over the moon, Larry. I haven't seen him that excited since he won the Open himself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good scenes. But he did finish the Masters with an 81, so he's worth watching this week. I think it'll be an interesting element to this. A strong Australian contingent, so Jason Day, another of those top 12 from the Masters, looking to roll on with his form. He's joined by Adam Scott, Minwoo Lee, Cam Davis, and Carl Phillips. Minwoo Lee, of course, making the cut last week. Adam Scott, Cam Davis missing, and Carl Phillips having a week at home to practice as he tries to climb into that regular major field sort of category. I briefly mentioned Harbour Town Golf Links before, but very familiar host to anyone who watches even a small amount of golf. It's been a PGA Tour event host since 1969, located on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina, and everyone will remember it for the big red and white striped lighthouse that sits behind the 18th green, but big family vacation place. You know, Matt Fitzpatrick, famously, family from England used to holiday there every year. Right. It's that sort of, a certain type of person or family has a regular house there or owns a house there, and they go and they play golf, they fish, they go on boats. That
whole area there, Jimmy, is golf central in the US for really good quality golf. And you've got the Carolinas and Georgia, and you've got Sea Island up there where a lot of the golfers live. There's golf everywhere, and there's a lot of good golf to be found. So it's not really a surprise, I guess, because they've got the weather too.
Exactly. Designed by Pete Dye, of course, famous creator of TPC Sawgrass and hundreds of other golf courses, but in concert with Jack Nicklaus he did this, and it's actually one of Nicklaus's first sort of forays into golf course design, and you'd argue some of his best or some of the best with his name on it. I was reading this morning, even inspired Tom Doak as a child to take an interest in golf course architecture. There you go.
There you go.
It is quite different to Augusta, but that doesn't mean it's not good. It's kind of narrow in parts off the tee, where the trees are definitely part of the challenge, but in a unique way. Land is exceptionally flat, as opposed to last week with the big rolling hills. It's just flat on water, but it weaves its way through water hazards, sand and sandy waste and bunkers. There's tree-lined sort of dog legs, interesting shaped and at times very small greens. There's a V-shaped green. You play to a lot of greens that are set against you on water, and they're very shallow. And it's a challenge for the best golfers in the world, despite its age. It's one of those ones that's always been updated. But
precision course, isn't it, rather than power? You've got to hit it to the right spots and be able to execute that shot from A to B and B to C.
It was always very much a ball strikers venue. That was the kind of player who won. But in recent years, you actually had a bit of a switch where some of those really good putters and I suppose strategic players have started to play well there. Matt Fitzpatrick, I mentioned before, he's got history there, but he's had a good history there. Jordan Spieth in his kind of prime had a good run here. So it's an interesting sort of a makeup of players on the past champions list that includes a couple of Australians as well. Aaron Baddeley, Peter Lonard, Greg Norman and Graham Marsh, all who have donned what is one of the worst sporting outfits ever, a tartan jacket.
It's just a horror show, and the less said about it, the better.
It's
for the non-golfer who switches on the news and sees the wrap-up of the event, sees the golfer in that stupid jacket. That's where they get their ideas about golf from, and this is just feeding it. Stop it, people. Get a nice jacket.
That's it. Like the jacket thing, obviously Augusta's helped build that into it. You get a green jacket and it's all a big part of it. And, you know, the trophy at Augusta was so secondary for so long that you rarely saw it. Yeah. And it's a great trophy, but the trophy is secondary. That so many places wanted to get a jacket of their own, and a group of men standing there in red tartan jackets is just...
It's offensive.
Yeah.
It's offensive.
Yeah,
Stop it.
Exactly what you say. It's for an external view of golf, it doesn't help us. So let's get a tip. And who do you like at the RBC Heritage?
Well, I gave this a lot of thought. I think he's the sort of player that I think does well around here. I think of McDowell, Donald, some of the Euro players in particular, actually, who perhaps have muck around with their ball flight and spin. And in that instance, I like Tommy Fleetwood. And I partly like Tommy Fleetwood because he looked genuinely inspired by what Rory had done. He was very deferential, as he should be, but Tommy's a guy who gets his place in the game. He's a lieutenant, not a general, but every now and then he's got to take over the command, and this could be one of those weeks. And here's the other reason. It's about time Tommy won something in the US so they'd stop saying he hasn't won.
Exactly.
And he's a really good player. Really good player.
He is. And he had his moments last week, but it feels like Tommy needs something to just spur him on, but he's also probably that elite level of player that makes so much money now as well that there's a little bit of the drive as to what gets you going at Tommy Fleetwood's age and, well set up, great family life and all that sort of thing. You wonder what drives them. Yeah. So
I wonder whether
I think he's a good one this week.
Yeah, I think Augusta feels a bit too big for Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a Tommy Fleetwood sort of venue.
Big golf course. So, yeah, go Tommy.
There's lots of good options there that I've mentioned earlier, but I think I'm going to go with Lowry. The Sunday 81 at Augusta is disastrous, but it's a blip on the radar for someone like him. Form was really good going in there. He's played well here before, not necessarily last year, but he's the kind of player who's going to knock. Exactly. He's going to get excited by having to flight the ball around and turn it over and do all those sort of things. And the Rory win has to do something for him.
Agreed.
Now, it could be alcohol poisoning or it could be
go either way, couldn't
inspiration.
Yes.
But we've got to step out onto an edge. But, of course, third seat in the room, being empty, it means the return of who would Logue pick?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want you to go first because I'd completely forgotten about this, so I've got to have a look through here.
Well, there's no more certain thing in my mind than Logue just goes the absolute easiest low-hanging fruit and talks about Scotty Scheffler almost won last week and he wasn't playing good. He's won here before. Everyone else is tired and Scotty's angry and wants to make sure everyone remembers that he's actually world number one despite having a facade of being the nicest man on the planet.
Yeah, understood. And that's probably not a bad tip from Logue. Well done, Logue. But I think Logue would actually go for Nick Dunlap, who not only completed a round of 90, completed the round. Most pros would have walked off when they were heading for that score. Fronted up the next day and got it to, I think, 4 under par. He bogeyed the last three. And Logue commented on it in our text thread, and I actually think he would go with Nick Dunlap. And do you know what? I don't think it's out of the question.
No, it's not. It was quite a fascinating week for Nick Dunlap.
When's the last time an uninjured golfer shot 90? I can't think. I know Phil Tatarangi, it happened to him once, but he had done his wrist at some point mid-round and kept playing foolishly. But if I recall, it happened on the Australasian Tour many, many years ago, late 80s, early 90s. And there was 3 players in the group, one shot 80-something, 2 shot 80-something, 1 shot 90. They got called into the office and questioned. It's like, how do you shoot 90? You're a professional golfer. On the LPGA, if you shoot 90, don't they give you 2 weeks off or a month off or something?
Yeah,
you're not allowed to play?
Yeah. The policy changed a little bit on the LPGA, but there was a certain score and if you went beyond it, you were kind of told, hey, if it was about a category of membership, it happened to Michelle Wee, of course, early in her time when she was still a teenager and turned pro. So, it'll be interesting to see how his year kind of maps out after all of that. But I think he earned a lot of fans.
Oh, 100%.
Finishing the round,
but then turning up the next day. Because the easiest thing in the world is to rub your wrist and say, sorry, guys, I can't be here tomorrow. You'll have to get, what's the marker's name? Jeff Knox will have to go out.
Well, no, Jeff Knox is retired now.
Has he?
You won. Yes, I'm now going to struggle to remember his name, Michael M., who's a Philadelphia amateur golf legend who plays off God knows plus something, and he's a huge tall guy, hits it a mile, so he played a couple of times this week.
Okay, fantastic. Well, there you go. Good on you, Nick. Well done.
On we go, and let's take a look at the LPGA Tour, which returns to action as its major season gets ready to get underway. But first, the JM Eagle LA Championship presented by PlastPro. Over to you, Rod.
And I know that you, Jimmy, like me, are intrigued by PlastPro.
Surely it's got to be like Band-Aids.
You'd have thought, wouldn't you? And having co-hosted a wound podcast at some point in the past, I was very surprised I hadn't heard of them. Well, when you look into it, Jimmy, it turns out we shouldn't be surprised because PlastPro, in fact, make fiberglass doors.
Okay.
I've got a feeling we went through this last year.
I think we went
through.
I
recall being just as stunned last year, and then I completely forgot. But in 2005, they opened a 1,000 square foot, fully automated plant in Ohio, and the new plant, most advanced of its kind in the industry, is capable of producing 1 million finished doors per year. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Nothing to do with golf, but pretty impressive.
I'm not necessarily that au fait with how many doors is a good production number, I'll be honest.
And why fiberglass?
It sounds big.
Yeah. Why fiberglass? I assume it's some sort of weather-resistant idea rather than timber or whatever. They're front doors for the house. Yeah, just there you go. It's one of those only in America things. I don't think we have fiberglass doors here. Having said that, we'll get emails now telling me about the 4 fiberglass door factories that are within walking distance of here. But as far as I'm aware at this stage, we don't make fiberglass doors in Australia. There's a shift in venue. This had been played at Wilshire Country Club in LA, which is one of the truly grand courses of the area. It's a real shame to see it having left there. They've moved to El Caballero Country Club, which is in, get this for a place name, Tarzana. Tarzan with an A on the end of it in California.
Nice.
Yeah. It's just left field, isn't it? Logan would like that. He'd like that a lot. If he ever went to LA, he'd go and stay in Tarzana just so that he could say that he did. Now, here's when I did a search on them, here's what came up, because you get the AI results these days instead of just the lists of websites. El Caballero Country in Tarzana, California, generally receives positive reviews for its well-maintained course, updated design, and challenging but fair play. That was ChatGPT's offering, I think. So thanks very much for that, or whoever Google uses to surprise. Bit hard to get a handle on this. They did play the US Women's Amateur 4-ball there, I think, in 2018. But in terms of big events and professional events, I couldn't find a lot of history there, so you don't get much. Course was completely redone by Robert Trent Jones in 2021. They took out a lot of trees and did a lot of stuff. It looks a lot like, Jimmy, Sydney suburban golf to me, but with that American aesthetic of the much more defined rough end fairway. So that line's is sort of very clear rather than sort of what we have here. Smallish greens, lots of bunkers. It looks like it could be interesting. There's a lot of short grass around the greens, and that always gives you, I think, the most entertaining golf, because that's when you really see the skills of the pros at their best. That will be combined with an excellent field. There's always an excellent field in this tournament. The players like LA. It's a great week for them. It always has been. But, of course, next week is the Chevron, first major of the year. Most of them want to have a tune-up the week before. We know players are different, but for the most part, the only top 10 players not in the field are Lydia, Charlie Hull, and Ronnie Yin. And the rest are all teeing up. So you're going to get a good week. And I'll actually be very interested to see this course. I've got a feeling it might be a better course than I'm assuming it is, but only because it's one of those private American courses and clubs that you've just never seen. But that might be a real sort of haven. Australia is well represented here. Hannah Green's up to world number 5. I didn't realise that, Jimmy. I know she's been floating around the top 10, but I didn't realise she got to world number 5.
Yeah, she got there at this time last year when she won this thing for the second time in a row. That's her. I think 5 is her top spot, but she's kind of been hanging in that 5 to sort of 7 spot for a while.
Yeah. The women's world rankings feel more volatile to me in that top 10. You see players moving in and out more often, I feel like, than you do in the men's game. I'm not sure why, but it's to have a sustained period in the top 10 means you really are playing well, and we know Hannah is good. Of course, those 2 wins came at a different course, but you have to like her chances because she's not in the world top 10 by accident, Jimmy.
Exactly.
Well supported by our other players. So we've got the LPGA for Australian fans is fantastic these days, Jimmy. Just slowly but surely, we've built this quite a number. We've got Minjee Lee, Gabby Ruffles, Steph Kyriakou, Grace Kim, Cassie Porter, Karis Davidson, Hyra Naveed, and Robin Choi is number 1 on the reserve list. So she's some chance to get in. At number 1 on the reserve list, there's every chance a player will pull out. So that's a pretty good spread of players, isn't it? We feel like we don't produce as many women players as we do men, but in fact, that's pretty impressive stuff. So
when you throw in players like Sarah Kemp coming back from her injury,
yes, of course, I forgot
that. There's
should have been on my list.
Good run, and we got a couple on the LET these days, and regularly getting amongst there. Kelsey Bennett had a good week out there last week. So women's golf at the absolute top level is very good for Australia.
Yep, and we need to to support those women more. Take an interest, guys. The golf is really good and worth watching. They're going to have a hard time, obviously, given the field strength. Nelly Korda's always danger, as is Jin Young Ko, who also seems to play well in California. She's had 4 top 10s from 6 tries here. Again, not at this course, and it really does change everything. Wilshire Country Club is a certain type of golf. This is not that type of golf, so it's going to be unfamiliar. But that doesn't mean the best players are the best players because they don't really mind where they play. They always seem to play well no matter what the course. Now, I'm going to have a thought about tip this week, Jimmy, and it's Angel Yin. Angel Yin is up to world number 8. Now, it's a home game for her because she's, of course, from California. She's got the right vibe, but I think the course might be a bit too restrictive. I'm actually going to go with Hannah to the three-peat, and the reason is she's locked in on next week, and a locked-in Hannah Green is a dangerous Hannah Green.
Yeah, and a player who maybe doesn't target, well, she'd be targeting this because she's won it twice before, but as you say, at a different venue, she'd be looking ahead to next week. But strikes as the kind of player who'd win an event when she's thinking about another event in a week's time.
She's the sort of player you would not be at all surprised to see her win 2 weeks in a row. You just wouldn't.
No.
That's the sort of player. A
Absolutely.
lot of players, that's not the case, but for Hannah Green, you get the feeling that win 1 week does not have any impact on whether she might win next. So, yeah, go Hannah. I think she'll have a good week, and I think she'll have a good week next week too.
It feels slightly unpatriotic not tipping Hannah to try and win 3 in a row, but I'm going to do that because new venue is the greatest mystery of all of this. So instead, I'm going to go with Esther Henselite.
Oh, great call.
Yeah, there's really something there in her game that impresses me. So I'm just kind of watching carefully. Had a decent week at the match play. Hasn't had that good of a year so far, but I think she's going to contend quite regularly this year. So something a bit different from me.
World's
And
lowest
from
handicap, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe
Before
so,
she turned
yeah.
pro, +6 or +7 or something. I think she was playing off. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Mate. Painfully thin. Bit Bruce Reed-like.
Let's hope she has more longevity than Bruce Reed, the
Snapped
former
in half.
Australian
Yes,
left-hand fast bowler. Speaking of Australian fast bowlers, you see Simon O'Donnell had 2 holes in one round.
These are the
week
sorts
or
of
so.
stories you wake up to and you think, is it April 1? What's going on here, Simon? A golf nut by the sound of it. Yeah, 2 holes in one in a round. Just extraordinary stuff.
Yeah, one on a par 4 too. Good on him. Logue would probably find some way to liken that to one of his achievements in life, but we're not interested. He's not here. But we do get a who would Logue pick. Surely Logue picks Jin Young Ko.
More on Matt Burns thing. I actually am going with my load pick for Sophia Popov, who's received a tournament, an invite to the tournament, and that's right in that Logue left field. He would have a more compelling reason than I have. I've just gone with because that's what Logue would do, but he'd find a case to make for her, and it would actually be good to see Sophia. It was such a fabulous story when she won that Women's Open from 389, I think, in the world rankings she was.
Yep.
It'd be nice to see her come back and have a bit more success. She's been a bit quiet lately.
Nice. And you are correct. Matt Burns will be very much paying attention to Jin Young Ko's play this week and next in a major championship. On we go to the DP World Tour that is very much not in its traditional home base of Europe with this week's Volvo China Open, Rod.
Tough assignment for me this week, Jimmy, because as I always do, I went and checked Ben Coley's preview, and he could find bugger all about the tournament and all about the course because it's being played at a new course. He ended up going with no tip.
Tip?
That's pretty serious, isn't it? No tip. I wonder whether he'll release another preview. But yes, it's an interesting venue. So Volvo China Open's got an interesting history. It goes back to 1995. It's been part of the Asian Tour. It's been part of the European Tour. It was part of the One Asia Tour for a while. It's sort of bounced around. It's been back on the European Tour last year and again this year, or the DP World Tour. So it is important that Asia has. I think the China Open should be an important event because it's a massive population base. If you think about the industry of golf, if you get it right in China, I don't think we do, but if China gets it right, it's good. But the China Open should be a real showpiece for golf in that part of the world, and it does tend to be. This week's course is the Enhance Anting Golf Club near Shanghai. It's near the car manufacturing hub of China, apparently, sort of 20 minutes out of there, which would be interesting to sort of see. It's an RTJ Junior design. It's difficult to find lots of info. Difficult to find a lot of pictures, actually, Jimmy. I found most of the images I found were PR shots, and they make the course look like what PR shots make them. Hyper green grass, blinding white sand, Big water hazards with holes going down either side. I don't know if it's a fair representation, though I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. Asian golf, because of the climate and the nature of the grasses they use, looks very different to golf here in Australia and other parts of sort of America and the UK. This course has been around since 2005, so it's their 20th anniversary. That may well indeed be the reason why the China Open's gone there. I'm not sure. I couldn't find any info on that. The scoring here is going to be interesting because there's nothing previous to go on. Generally speaking, a field of this calibre, on a course of this nature, they tend to fare pretty well, so you'd expect some low scoring. In terms of the field, Adrian Otaegi is defending. He won at a different course last year. It's a decent Euro field. Angel Hidalgo, Eugenio Chikara, Kudo Nakajima, our own Elvis Smith, Jordan Smith, Yannick Paul, Brandon Stone, those kind of names. Haotong Lee's is it Haotong Lee or Lee Haotong? I have never been able to definitively.
I would say in China he would be referred to as Li Haotong, and outside we call him Haotong Li.
So I'll go with Haotong Li because you're the host and you've okayed it. He's a popular figure at home. He has been. He's won this before and he's contended in at the Tour. He won in Qatar earlier this year, so has to be considered a chance. In fact, he will probably be my tip. We'll come to that in a minute. Australians in the field: Jason Scrivener, Elvis Smiley, George Worrell, George Worrell. What do we know about George Worrell, by the way, Jimmy?
Primarily Northern Territory based. George Worrell plays on the China Tour over there now, which there was at one stage there was a bunch of different tours in China, including a PGA Tour sanctioned tour over there, but plays on the China Tour and they get quite a few spots this week, which is more than I ever remember them getting before in this event. So he gets in via that category.
Which is a good thing, by the way, because those local players who get to play, that's how you improve the standard of professional golf in a country that's a non-traditional golf country. You get lots of their players and let them play in events with good players and they learn stuff. So, and Daniel Hillier and Kazuma Kabori, they're New Zealanders, obviously, but if they win, we adopt them. If they don't, we just pretend like it never happened.
Exactly.
I don't mind Elvis's chances this week because I feel like he's about due. It hasn't been terrific since the PGA. It hasn't been poor, but it hasn't been terrific, and just feels like about time. So I'd like to see Elvis win again. So there you go. There's absolutely nothing to really back that up. But I am going to give the nod to Haotong Li. It's a dangerous tip. Anything can happen. He's a bit like Anthony Kim.
Genuinely, anything can happen with Haotong Li.
He's a bit Anthony Kim. He can reel off 12 birdies or he can reel off 12 double bogeys and you won't know which player is there. But there is a seriously good golfer in there. I watched him on the China Tour, I'm going to say 10 or 12 years ago, played the final round of an event with Reen Gibson, who shot 55, I think, holds the Guinness Book of World Records, in an incredible win. And I watched that whole final round and I remember thinking, this kid is amazingly good. And I asked Reen Gibson about it when he was in Australia later in the year and he said, mate, the talent level is off the charts. But you've got to have the mind as well to keep up with it. So I'm going to go with Haotong. I think he tends to play well in China and in the China Open. If he can just figure out how to let out that incredibly talented golfer in a more controlled way more often, he could be a real force in world golf because he's gifted. He really is.
Absolutely. I think that's always been every single person's takeaway of him is that he's got some insane ability and he's occasionally shown flashes of it, but not for extended periods and often with quite a lot of quirk that comes with it that people sort of struggle to understand how he manages to get the best golf out of himself at times.
Was it his mum that waded into a pond to retrieve a putter that he threw in there after missing a putt? And I think he had some issues with the other players, did not in the team room at the President's Cup. It felt like
he showed up in Melbourne in 2019 basically underdone and with a caddy who wasn't a normal caddy and wasn't a caddy in any way, and it was kind of he didn't quite, I don't think, buy into Ernie Els' vision maybe to the extent that the others did. Yes. But a good tip nonetheless. You mentioned 55s and everything like that. Elvis Smiley had 59 at his home club of Southport the other day, so he's obviously finding some good form at home.
Listen, good on him for going back there too. The guys that he's grown up playing there with, his mum Liz told me, all much older blokes. They've really mentored him, been like that whole second or series of uncles, whatever. Great stuff for Elvis to go back there and play with them as the Australian PGA champion. That you don't get that in other sports, Whoever your rugby league legends are popping back to their home ground to have a run with the B team. But, Elvis turns up there. It would be an amazing thing, I would imagine, every time he goes there.
I'm not going to go for Elvis. I'm going to go for another Australian in Jason Scrivener, who I have this underlying feeling he's going to have a decent year. He's obviously kept his card in Europe for so long, so he's just a consistent, really strong player. But the Australians have played well in this event before. Brett Rumford's won this before. It's often a new venue. They're often grainy, they're difficult, but there's birdies out there if you play well. There's a lot of these players who will have had a week or two off, given there hasn't been a lot of world golf around with the Masters on. It feels like it's got a bit of Jason Scrivener about it. He would have been home at Mandurah and WA and makes a trip over there. So Jason Scrivener for me.
Another one of those players whose record is his golf game is better than his record. It's a stupid thing to say, of course, because your golf game's only as good as your record shows, but he always looks like he should be doing better than he has to this point. So I agree with you.
Well, he's one of those players that the game is very good. The consistency is very impressive. I mean, if you go back and look at people who've kept their card for that long and, churned a living and done all that sort of stuff, it's not exactly, run of the mill commonplace. But I think he's one of those that suffers as well. He's a very well put together guy. He just looks like a pro's pro. So you sort of think, oh, well, he must be outstanding. He just looks like he's the man, but he probably hasn't quite taken off with as much sort of top of the leaderboard stuff that you would expect of a player of his quality. So let's hope that changes this week. And surely Lowe gets dazzled by a 59 and Elvis, and there'd be something obscure about a China swing. Yeah. Surely that's his. Something
left-handed in China. There'll be something about left-handedism in China that he would have dug up, some historical fact that's genetically very interesting. I agree with you. That's possible to do. But just out of spite, I'm tipping Ewan Ferguson for Logue.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
That's also,
eat that,
yes.
Logue. Yeah. Take next week off too if you like. I've got plenty of these. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And basically Ewan Ferguson plays every week. Logue doesn't show up. Maybe there's something in that too. But I think everyone who listens can get behind Ewan Ferguson just to spite Logue.
Wouldn't it be delicious if Ewan Ferguson walked away with the trophy on Sunday? I would enjoy that enormously.
Outstanding.
Yeah. Who gets the win if that's the case, me or Logue?
It's Logue, because then he has to be associated with it next week when we run through how everything went. So it adds to his pain. So I like that.
Nice.
That will just about do us for episode 108. Rod, I assume like everyone else, you're probably going to take a slightly lighter approach to watching golf this week after last.
Well, I'm not sure. I might have got hooked again.
That's it. It has that effect. It's either you're exhausted, you've seen enough golf and you wait until there's another major on, or you're now, how good is this? I remember this. This is great.
But it's all of it, Jimmy. It's the theatre around it as well. It's the making coffee in the ad breaks and organising snacks and, watching golf in Australia from overseas is a whole scene. And I really got into it. I had a couple of leftover sausages for breakfast one morning. I haven't done that for years, all thanks to the Masters. So who knows?
Growing the game in their own way and growing the broadening the horizons of you in a morning is quite an achievement for Augusta National.
And growing my waistline at the same time. It's a triple header.
Yeah.
It's a triple bottom line.
Yeah.
Well done, everyone.
Well done to Fred Ridley in the Masters tournament.
Thank you, Fred.
You can, of course, keep up to date with all the happenings, goings on, and more of these tournaments, as well as more beyond the tournament space on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au, where you can also listen to our sibling podcast, The Thing About Golf, which we haven't mentioned for a couple of weeks. Rod, who's next on The Thing About Golf?
Well, funny we should be talking about high-profile and televised golf. Andrew Cotter. Some will remember Andrew from his extensive golf commentary and other sports. I think he did the Olympics. He does track and field and tennis and some other stuff. Very good mate of Andy Murray's. But yes, Andrew Cotter will be the guest. There was something I was going to talk about. I can't remember. Anyway, Andrew Cotter.
The other thing people will remember him for is during lockdown and his videos, narrated videos of his dogs, Olive and Mabel.
The first one was spectacular, and the thing that makes it so spectacular, I'm going to pull it out and put it at the start of the episode. Right at the end, after he's finished this extraordinary commentary of the two dogs eating dinner, you just hear his poor, long-suffering partner say, "Get on with it." Brilliant Scottish, just this voice from nowhere. Get on with it. You can imagine this poor woman's been tortured by this overgrown man-child commentating everything in their life for years and years and years. She's had enough. Get on with it. Feed the dogs and get on with it. So, yeah, Andrew Cotter. It's a very good interview too. Lovely guy.
Outstanding. Very good. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week on Playing from the Tips.